The twin suns of Calith burned bright over the silver spires of the Empress's palace. The towers glittered like blades in the sky, and banners of blue and gold rippled in the warm winds. At the highest balcony, Empress Serenia stood with calm eyes, her robe flowing around her like liquid light. She was young for an empress, but carried herself with ancient grace. Her people, tall and elegant, always bowed low when she passed. To them, she was untouchable, sacred. Yet today, something new was about to walk through her gates, something her people called strange, even fragile, the humans. Serenia's empire had stretched across half the stars for centuries. Many alien races bent their knee before her throne. But now, after years of silence, the newly risen human colonies had asked to join the Great Galactic Council. The council agreed, though with caution. And now, as a sign of trust, one small group of humans had come to her world. Down in the grand courtyard, the palace guard prepared for the guests. Their tall silver armor gleamed. Each soldier was bred for loyalty, trained from childhood to protect their empress without question. They marched in perfect lines, their weapons sharp, their eyes proud. Yet when the humans arrived, the palace stirred with whispers. They were not tall like the Empress's people, nor covered in shining scales. They looked plain, even weak. Their skin was soft, their frames smaller. Some courtiers chuckled quietly, wondering how such beings had survived the dark void of space. The center of the human group walked a man named Captain Elias Ward. His steps were steady, not hurried, not proud, simply firm. His uniform was simple gray, not decorated with jewels or gold, but clean and worn by service. His face carried lines of long duty, though he was not old. His eyes scanned everything, the balconies, the archways, the movement of the guards, as if danger might be hiding anywhere. Serenia watched him with interest. Most aliens, when standing before her, stared in awe or bowed too deeply. But this human soldier did neither. He bowed with respect, but his eyes did not linger in fear. They lifted again, calm and steady. The Empress descended her steps with graceful steps. Her guards followed like shadows. She spoke with her voice, soft yet commanding. "Welcome, humans of Earth. You stand in the heart of Calith. You stand before the throne of my ancestors." The human envoy leader, a diplomat, gave a polished speech about friendship, trade, and peace. Serenia listened politely, though her gaze drifted again and again to the soldier standing silently. Behind the diplomat, he said nothing, but his posture spoke volumes. Where her own guards stood tall to display strength, this man stood ready, prepared to move if needed. His hand rested close to the weapon at his side, not threatening, but alert. He looked not at the beauty of the palace, not at the shining banners, but at her, as if he weighed not her power, but her safety. Later, in the grand hall, Serenia held a feast for her guests. Tables glittered with crystal cups and plates of glowing fruits, roasted meats and sweet wines. Music from silver harps filled the air. Her courtiers laughed, whispered, and stole glances at the humans. Some mocked quietly, asking if humans were not too fragile to walk among stars. Others argued that the humans were unpredictable and dangerous. But Serenia noticed something. While the diplomats enjoyed the food and the music, Elias did not sit easily. He remained close to his group, his eyes always scanning. When the doors opened, he looked. When servants moved, he checked their hands. He drank little, ate little. His purpose was clear. He was not here to enjoy. He was here to guard. Serenia's curiosity grew. At last, she spoke to him directly. "Captain Elias Ward," she said, her voice carrying through the hall. All eyes turned to the human soldier. "You are not a diplomat. What do you think of my empire?" The hall fell silent. No one spoke to the Empress so plainly. Even her highest lords chose their words with caution. But Elias did not falter. He bowed his head slightly. "It is beautiful, Your Majesty," he said in simple words, "but beauty does not always mean safety." Gasps rose from the courtiers. Some whispered in anger. A few guards stepped forward, ready to silence him. But Serenia raised her hand, and all stilled. Her lips curved, not in anger, but in thought. This human dared to speak truth rather than flattery, and though his words were simple, they rang with something rare: honesty. That night, after the feast ended, Serenia walked the quiet halls of her palace. She passed her guards, who bowed deeply, their eyes lowered. Yet she remembered the soldier's steady gaze. She thought of his words: safety, beauty. In her empire, no one questioned her safety. Her guards had always sworn they would never let harm touch her. And yet, as she looked at their polished armor and proud faces, she wondered, would they still stand if true danger came? Rumors had already reached her ears of unrest in the outer worlds, whispers of rebels who hated the crown, who planned to strike at the very heart of the empire. Her advisors dismissed them as nonsense. Her guards claimed they could crush any enemy. But the human soldier's words stayed with her. Far away, in his guest chamber, Elias sat polishing his weapon. He was a man who had seen too many battles to believe in easy safety. He knew the look of hidden unrest, the silence before storms. And though this palace shone like a jewel, he felt a shadow stirring beneath it. He did not know then how soon it would fall, but when it did, he would be ready. And unlike the others, he would not run. The grand hall of the palace glittered with light. Golden chandeliers hung from the tall ceilings, their crystals glowing like stars. Long tables stretched across the room, heavy with food and shining plates. Courtiers in robes of bright colors laughed and whispered, while the human guests sat with polite smiles trying to hide their unease. Empress Serenia sat at the head of the hall, her posture perfect, her expression calm. Her crown glimmered with sapphires, and her eyes swept over her people. To anyone watching, she looked untouchable, as if nothing in the galaxy could ever shake her. But Elias Ward, the human soldier, saw things differently. He had been a soldier too long to be fooled by music and candles. His eyes never rested. He studied the guards at the doors, the servants carrying trays, the shadows high in the arches. His instincts whispered of something wrong, something hidden under the laughter. The Empress noticed his unease. Twice their eyes met across the hall. She saw no fear in him, only a steady readiness. She wondered again about this human, who seemed to guard not only his own people but even her. Then the music stopped. At first it seemed like nothing more than a pause between songs. The courtiers still laughed, lifting their jeweled cups. But Elias's hand moved to his weapon, his head tilted slightly, listening. Then it came. A sound like thunder shook the palace. The floor trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. A second blast followed, nearer this time. Windows shattered and the candles flickered out. The courtiers screamed as the great doors of the hall burst open with a crash. Figures in dark armor stormed inside. Their faces were covered, their weapons blazing with red fire. The rebels had come. "Death to the crown," one shouted. His voice echoed like steel. The courtiers panicked. Plates clattered, cups fell, and nobles ran in every direction. Servants dropped their trays and tried to flee. The music had died, and now only the sound of terror filled the air. The Empress's guards, her tall silver-armored soldiers, stepped forward. For a moment, Serenia thought they would defend her. But as the rebels' weapons fired and the first guards fell, others froze, their proud faces twisted with fear. One by one they turned and fled, their polished armor clattering as they abandoned their posts. Serenia's heart clenched. She had believed in their loyalty, had trusted them since childhood. But now, when true danger came, they ran like frightened children. She stood alone on her throne, the rebels closing in, but not entirely alone. Captain Elias Ward did not run. The instant the doors crashed open, he moved. He leapt in front of the Empress, drawing his weapon with calm speed. Shots flew across the hall, burning holes in the walls, but Elias stood firm. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice steady, his eyes fixed on the attackers. The Empress froze for only a heartbeat. No one had ever spoken to her so directly. Her guards always called her Majesty, always asked for her orders. But this human gave her none. He simply acted. The rebels fired again, the blasts striking against the pillars. Elias returned fire, each shot precise. 2 rebels fell, their weapons clattering to the floor. The others shouted in anger, pushing forward. The courtiers had scattered, some crawling under tables, others vanishing through side doors. The grand hall, once filled with laughter, was now a battlefield. Serenia clutched the edge of her throne. Fear rose like fire in her chest. She had never faced death so closely. All her life she had been told she was untouchable, that her guards would protect her, that her empire was unbreakable. But in that moment all the illusions shattered, and yet one figure stood like a wall between her and death. A single human soldier. Elias moved with practiced skill, every step measured. He shielded the Empress with his body, taking the fire, meant for her. Twice the blasts struck his armor, throwing sparks, but he did not fall. His weapon fired back again and again, forcing the rebels to take cover behind the broken doors. The Empress whispered, almost without meaning to, "Why do you not flee like the others?" Elias did not turn. His eyes stayed on the rebels. "Because you are still standing," he said. The narrow passage behind the throne smelled of dust and stone. It was dimly lit by small glowing crystals on the walls, their light trembling with each rumble of distant explosions. The Empress's robe brushed the ground as she hurried, her heart beating fast. Captain Elias Ward led the way, his weapon raised, his boots striking the stone floor in steady rhythm. He moved with the precision of a man who had escaped ambushes before, every step measured, every glance sharp. Behind them, faint echoes of rebels' boots followed. The Empress's breath came uneven. She had never run like this before. Her life had been filled with calm ceremonies, guarded walks, and careful processions. Now the air was hot with smoke, and the sound of battle grew closer with every turn of the passage. Finally she whispered, "Why do you risk this for me? I am not even of your people." Elias did not slow his pace. "Because you are a leader," he said simply. "A leader abandoned is a people abandoned, and someone must stand between you and the dark." Serenia's eyes widened. His words were not poetic, not wrapped in the grand speeches she heard from her lords and ministers. They were plain, heavy with meaning. He risked his life not because of her crown nor her jewels, but because she was a person in danger. The passage opened into a hidden stairwell spiraling down. Elias motioned for her to follow. "Keep low, stay close." They descended quickly, the air growing thicker with smoke. Shouts echoed faintly above, rebels searching, their footsteps pounding against marble. Halfway down the stair, a section of wall cracked with a thunderous boom. Dust and shards rained down. The Empress stumbled, her foot catching on a step. Before she could fall, Elias caught her, his arm steady as iron. "You're safe," he said, pulling her back to her feet. She stared at him for a moment, her chest rising with hurried breaths. Never had anyone held her like that. Firm, unshaken, not bowing, not trembling in awe, just holding her as one human would hold another. They reached the bottom of the stair and entered a long corridor lit by the glow of burning torches. The palace trembled again as more explosions shook the city above. The rebels were everywhere now. Elias slowed, checking each corner before moving. His body was always between her and danger, like a wall of flesh and will. Suddenly, shadows moved, ahead. 2 rebels appeared, their weapons raised. Elias reacted before they could fire, his shot swift and precise. Both fell, their armor clattering. The Empress froze, staring at the fallen bodies. She had never seen death so close. Her people spoke of war in numbers, in distant reports, but never in faces. These rebels were not faceless now. They were her, subjects twisted by anger and hate lying dead at her feet. Her stomach turned, but Elias's voice pulled her back. "Keep moving." She nodded, forcing her legs to follow. The corridor ended at a heavy wooden door. Elias pushed it open, and smoke rushed in. They stepped into the outer city. What Serenia saw froze her heart. The shining streets of her capital were aflame. Towers that once glittered like crystal now burned with red fire. Civilians ran in panic, some carrying children, some dragging carts with their last belongings. Rebels chased them, shouting threats. The night sky glowed orange with fire and black with smoke. Serenia's breath caught. She had never seen her people like this. Not in fear, not in despair. From the palace windows, the city had always looked beautiful, peaceful. But here in the streets, the truth was carved in flame. Elias guided her into the shadows of an alley, his hand raised, signaling silence. The Empress pressed close to the wall, her robes stained by soot. They moved carefully through the ruined streets. Once they passed a family hiding behind broken carts. A mother clutched her children, their eyes wide with terror. Rebels were near, searching with sharp cries. Elias signaled the family to stay silent, then moved on, keeping the Empress shielded. But Serenia stopped. She could not ignore the family's fear. For the first time, she crouched low, speaking softly to the children. "You will be safe. Stay hidden until the fire fades." Her words calmed them, and she felt their tiny hands cling to her robe. She had never been touched by children of the streets before. She had never been close enough. When she rose, her eyes were wet. Elias saw, but he did not speak. He only nodded once as if he understood. The rebels were still hunting. At one corner, a group spotted them. Shouts rang out, and fire burst against the stone walls. Elias pushed the Empress behind cover, returning fire with calm skill. His shots forced the rebels back, but their numbers were growing. "We can't stay in the open," Elias said. He pointed toward a broken archway leading into the ruins of a marketplace. "Through there!" They sprinted, flames roaring on either side. Serenia's robes caught sparks, and Elias quickly tore the burning cloth free before it spread. She stumbled, coughing on the smoke, and Elias lifted her in his arms without hesitation. She gasped. "Put me down." "Not while you can't run," he said firmly, carrying her through the archway. For the Empress, who had always been treated like fragile glass, the moment was unreal. No one had ever dared to carry her like this. Yet in his arms through smoke and falling ash, she felt not weakness but safety. At last they reached the shelter of a collapsed tower. Inside, shadows and silence gave them brief cover. Elias set her down gently, his breath steady, though sweat lined his face. The Empress sat against the wall, her chest rising and falling. For the first time, she truly saw her city through her. People's eyes, burning, broken, fearful, and beside her sat a man who had no reason to stay, yet still chose to fight for her. Her voice was quiet when she spoke. "I see now why your people are feared. Not for strength of body, but strength of spirit." Elias checked his weapon, his expression calm. "It's not fear we want, Your Majesty. It's respect." She looked at him long, her mind heavy with new thoughts. Outside, the fires roared, and the rebels searched the streets. The night of shadows was not over. Their escape was only beginning. But the Empress knew one thing with sudden clarity. She was alive only because one human soldier refused to abandon her. The streets of Calith were no longer the shining avenues of the palace district. Now, they were filled with fire, smoke, and fear. The tall towers that had glittered in the sunlight were blackened and crumbling. Civilians ran in all directions, clutching children, dragging carts, and screaming in panic. The smell of burning wood and scorched metal filled the air. "Empress," Serenia moved carefully, following Captain Elias Ward as he led the way through twisted streets and shadowed alleys. Each step was measured. The ground was uneven, littered with debris and broken furniture. Fires crackled along the walls, and the occasional collapse of a building sent clouds of dust into the sky. Behind them, the rebels were not far. Their angry shouts echoed through the ruined streets, and the clatter of weapons striking stone announced their pursuit. Elias kept close to the Empress, his hand brushing hers when necessary to keep her steady. Every instinct in him screamed for caution, yet he moved with confidence. "Stay close," he said, glancing behind. They are fast, but we are faster if we use the alleys. Sirenia nodded, though her legs were trembling. She had always commanded from a throne, not ran through burning streets. Yet in this chaos, something stirred inside her, a sense of courage she had never felt before. They turned into a narrow alley where smoke blocked the moonlight. A family crouched in the corner, terrified, their young child crying softly. Elias paused and lowered his weapon. "Hide here," he instructed the family. "Do not move until the danger passes." The Empress knelt, whispering to the child, "It's safe now. Stay quiet." For a moment she forgot herself, thinking only of their survival. The human soldier's example had taught her that leadership was not always about commands. It was about protecting those who could not protect themselves. Suddenly a rebel spotted them. He shouted and more rebels poured into the alley, their weapons raised. Elias moved first, positioning himself between the Empress and the attackers. His calm presence was like a wall. The rebels fired, but he returned shots with accuracy, forcing them to take cover behind broken walls. Sirenia pressed close to him, feeling the strength in his body. Her mind raced. Her palace guards had abandoned her when bullets flew, but this one human stood firm. She realized for the first time that loyalty was not measured by bloodlines or status, but by choice. Elias had chosen to protect her, though no one asked him to. "Through the marketplace," Elias whispered, pointing to a large square partially destroyed by fire. "It's risky, but it will confuse them." They sprinted across a side street, dodging falling debris. Smoke and flames danced around them, and the heat burned their skin. Rebels shouted behind them, their footsteps pounding in time with the Empress's racing heart. The marketplace was chaos. Stalls lay in ruins, carts overturned, and fires spread across the cobblestones. Civilians ran, some falling, some helping the wounded. Elias moved like a shadow, guiding the Empress through the wreckage, shielding her whenever danger approached. A large rebel blocked their path, raising his weapon with deadly intent. Elias fired first, striking the attacker's armor, but the man did not fall immediately. Elias adjusted quickly, disarming him with a precise strike before the rebel could aim again. The Empress watched, heart pounding. She had never seen such skill, such courage, such control in the face of death. The Empress and Captain Elias Ward emerged from the shadows of the ruined city and approached the palace walls. The grand towers loomed above, blackened and scarred from the earlier assault. Fires still flickered along the gates, and the echoes of battle drums and shouted commands resonated through the night. Sirenia had never imagined she would return to the palace under such circumstances. The halls she had walked in beauty were now broken, burned, and filled with fear. And yet, as she looked at the walls, she felt a spark of determination she had never known before. Elias led the way, scanning the perimeter carefully. "We can hold them here," he said. "If we use the walls, their numbers won't matter as much. Cover is your friend, and courage. That can inspire even the weakest." The Empress followed him, clutching her robe as she stepped over debris. Civilians who had survived the chaos gathered behind them, their faces pale, their eyes wide with fear. Many had lost homes, families, and possessions, yet they still looked to Elias and, strangely, to Sirenia. "This is madness," one of the civilians whispered. "How can we fight them?" Elias did not answer immediately. He crouched beside the nearest barricade and gestured for them to stay low. "We fight because we must," he said, "because if we do not, nothing will survive this night." Sirenia felt a shiver, not of fear, but of resolve. She remembered the first moments in the grand hall when her own guards had fled. Now, with Elias at her side, she realized the truth. Strength was not in numbers, nor in polished armor. Strength was in courage, determination, and sacrifice. The rebels advanced, their shouts loud and angry, but the humans and civilians on the walls, inspired by Elias's calm bravery, took positions behind cover. Even Sirenia found herself taking aim with a crossbow, her hands steady despite her fear. "Don't hesitate," Elias called. "Aim carefully. Protect each other. We are not soldiers, but we can hold the line." The first wave of rebels climbed toward the walls, their weapons glinting in the firelight. Elias moved like a shadow, firing at the attackers with precision. He never stopped protecting the Empress, stepping in front of her whenever danger came. Too close. One rebel leapt over a damaged barricade, swinging a weapon at the Empress. In the blink of an eye, Elias shoved her behind him, taking the full force of the attack himself. The weapon struck his shoulder, and he staggered, but he did not fall. "You will not be harmed," he shouted, firing again and forcing the attacker to retreat. Serenya's heart raced. She had never seen such bravery. Here was a man who had no claim to her throne, no duty beyond his own conscience. Yet he placed himself between her and death without hesitation. The rebels regrouped, and a second wave attacked. This time the numbers pressed in from both sides. Civilians trembled, some faltering under fear. Serenya saw one man ready to retreat. She stepped forward, raising her voice. "Stand," she commanded. "If we flee, all is lost. If we fight, we protect our homes, our people, and each other." Her words rang clear across the wall. The civilians hesitated, then straightened. Courage began to flow through them like fire. Inspired by the Empress's determination and Elias's calm bravery, they took aim and defended their positions with makeshift weapons. Elias glanced at her and gave a slight nod of approval. "You are learning fast," he said, firing again. The Empress swallowed her fear. She raised the crossbow, aimed, and fired at a rebel climbing the wall. The bolt struck true. Her confidence grew with each successful shot. She was no longer a distant ruler on a throne. She was a leader among her, people standing alongside them in the fight. Hours seemed to pass in the chaos. The rebels continued to press, but the combination of civilian courage, Elias's skill, and the Empress's newfound determination created an unbreakable line. At one point, a fireball struck near Elias, throwing him backward. Blood trickled from his arm, but he forced himself up. "Keep moving forward," he shouted. "Do not let them break us." Serenya ran to his side. "You are hurt," she exclaimed. He shook his head. "It is nothing. We cannot stop now." The Empress realized something profound in that moment. Leadership was not about safety. Leadership was about standing, even when the odds were against you, even when pain threatened, even when fear screamed for retreat. Together they fought side by side. The Empress's aim improved, the civilians became bolder, and Elias continued to shield them all. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The rebels' morale faltered under the unexpected resistance. Their numbers did not matter against courage and determination. Finally, the remaining rebels retreated, disappearing into the shadows from which they had come. The city was still burning, but the walls remained in the hands of the Empress and her defenders. The victory was hard won, but it was real. Elias leaned against the wall, exhausted but smiling faintly. "We held them," he said. Serenya approached him, her robe scorched, her hands trembling. She placed her hand on his arm. "You held me," she said softly. "When all others fled, you stayed. You protected me. You saved lives today that no one else could." Elias shook his head. "I did only what anyone should do. Protect the weak. Stand against danger. That is all." "No," she said firmly. "It is more. It is courage. It is loyalty. It is humanity." She looked out across the city, seeing the people who had survived, the fires that could be rebuilt, and the lessons learned in blood and fire. For the first time, she understood that an empire could be strong not because of armies, but because of the hearts of its people. And in the human standing beside her, she had seen the heart of courage. That night, as they rested on the palace walls, the Empress made a quiet promise to herself. She would rebuild not just the city, but the spirit of her people. And she would honor the soldier who taught her the meaning of true loyalty and bravery. The city had survived, not because of towering walls or shining armor, but because one human soldier refused to abandon an empress when all others had fled. And for Serenya, that was a lesson that no palace or throne could ever teach. The morning sun rose over the city of Calith, burning through smoke and ashes. The towers of the palace, though scarred and blackened, still stood tall. Fires flickered in the streets, but the people who had survived the night's chaos began to emerge from hiding. Their faces were tired, covered in soot, but their eyes held a new determination. Empress Serenia walked the palace walls with Captain Elias Ward at her side. The events of the night had changed everything. The grand halls, the shining banners, and the polished guards had all proved fragile when true. Danger came, but Elias, the human soldier, had shown her a different strength, one of courage, loyalty, and unwavering resolve. The Empress stopped at the edge of the wall, looking down at her people. Civilians gathered in small groups, picking through debris, tending to the wounded, helping each other rise from fear. For the first time, she truly saw them not as numbers or subjects, but as individuals, each with a heart, a will, and the potential for courage. Elias stood beside her, calm and steady. Though his arm bore a bruise from the battle, and his uniform was scorched, he had fought tirelessly, never abandoning his post, never faltering, even when the enemy outnumbered them. Serenia turned to him, her voice strong, carrying across the courtyard. "Captain Elias Ward," she began, her eyes meeting his. "The galaxy has seen many soldiers, many warriors, many leaders, but none have shown me what true courage is except you." The humans and surviving civilians around the walls quieted, listening. Even some of the remaining alien guards who had fled the night before and returned now in shame looked on with curiosity and guilt. "You risked your life for me, for them, for this city," the Empress continued. "When others ran, you stood. When others faltered, you fought. You have taught me, and all who witness this, that strength is not measured by size or titles but by the heart and the will to protect." Elias shook his head modestly. "I only did what anyone should do," he said. "Stand against danger. Protect those who cannot protect themselves." Serenia smiled, but it was more than gratitude. It was recognition. "No," she said firmly. "It is more than that. It is humanity. And it is this humanity that will guide the Empire into a new age." With a gesture, she called forth the remaining palace guards. Their armor was dented, their faces pale with shame. "You swore loyalty," she said, her voice ringing clear. "But when the test came, many of you fled. From this day forward, loyalty is not granted by birth or oath. It is earned through courage and action." Some guards lowered their heads. Others looked away, unable to meet her gaze. But those who remained, inspired by the example of Elias, stepped forward, ready to serve not out of fear but out of choice. The Empress then addressed the gathered civilians and surviving humans. "The city has survived because one man chose to stand," she said, nodding toward Elias. "Let his actions inspire all of us. Let us rebuild not just walls and towers, but the spirit of Calith itself. Let courage, loyalty, and humanity be the foundation of a new empire." Applause and cheers echoed across the palace walls. The people, once fearful and scattered, now stood tall. They began to see themselves not as helpless civilians but as active participants in their survival and future. Elias stepped forward, though he tried to remain modest. Serenia raised her hand, stopping the applause long enough to speak again. "Captain Ward will not hold a title and name alone," she said. "He will be my protecto,